Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show. And, when we look at how modern security teams are operating today, it honestly feels like we're asking people to run an air traffic control tower, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But instead of having this crisp, clear radar screen, they're looking through a pair of totally foggy binoculars. And to make matters worse, they're surrounded by, I don't know, thousands of incoming drones that have been deliberately painted to look exactly like commercial airliners.
That visual is, it's kind of terrifying, actually, but it is incredibly accurate for what a security operations center deals with every single day.
Right.
And I think the real kicker in your scenario is that every single time they spot one of those drones, the controller has to, manually run down the stairs, walk all the way out to the tarmac, check the drone's registration clipboard by hand, and then run all the way back up to the tower just to decide what to do next.
Which is an absolutely impossible workflow when you look at the sheer scale of the threat landscape we're dealing with. I mean, Microsoft recently reported detecting 8.3 billion email-based phishing threats in just the first quarter of 2026 alone.
Wow. Yeah, 8.3 billion.
Exactly. 8.3 billion. You just cannot run up and down the stairs for that kind of volume. So, for you listening right now, the CISO who is leading these teams and really trying to manage this completely overwhelming airspace, our deep dive today is going to cut right through all that current vendor noise around agentic AI.
And there's a lot of noise out there right now.
So much noise. We are breaking down what agentic threat intelligence actually is. But more importantly, we're going to look at how it practically, tangibly solves the external threat bottlenecks your analysts are just suffocating under right now.
Yeah, that practical application is so key here.
It is. And I want to set the tone right out of the gate here. This is not some gloomy doom and gloom conversation about how the bad guys are winning and we are all doomed.
Right. Nobody needs another one of those deep dives.
Exactly. This is a highly positive, really solutions-focused look at a modern delivery model that is genuinely finally empowering security teams to get ahead of the curve.
I am so thrilled we are tackling this today because the technology we are exploring, it's fundamentally shifting how we build defensive workflows.
Yeah.
For years, we've treated this volume problem as a human resource problem. But we are finally realizing it's actually an architecture problem. It's really an incredibly exciting time to be building and managing a SOC because, the tools are finally matching the reality of the task.
Let's start with that reality, actually, because before we get into the weeds of agentic AI, we have to isolate the exact operational bottleneck we're actually trying to clear.
Right.
Because the prevailing assumption out there is often that, well, we just don't have enough visibility or, the threat intelligence we are getting is just bad.
Which is completely false, by the way.
Right. When you look at the data, the intelligence itself, like the domain registration patterns, the phishing kit, fingerprints, it's actually very high quality. The issue isn't bad intel. It is strictly a matter of time and delivery.
The data generation side of the house is working perfectly. Too perfectly, in fact.
Right. We are drowning in it.
Exactly. We are producing mountains of genuinely valuable intelligence, but the delivery model relies on human beings to process it sequentially. I mean, the APWG tracked 3.8 million phishing attacks in 2025.
Wait, 3.8 million?
Yeah, and if you look at quarter two alone, it hit 1.13 million. That was the highest quarterly total we've seen in 2 years.
Wow.
And then Group IB recorded over 80,000 dedicated phishing sites in 2024. If you break that math down, that is roughly 220 brand new, highly targeted phishing sites standing up every single day.
And the really crazy part is those sites aren't sticking around long enough to be just, casually investigated. That is the ticking clock working against every security team right now.
Yeah, time's the ultimate enemy here.
Exactly. The average phishing site lives for just 54 hours.
Which, 54 hours sounds short enough, right? But the median lifespan, where the vast majority of these sites actually operate, is under 6 hours.
Under 6 hours? Are you kidding?
I wish I was. They spin up, they launch their credential harvesting campaigns, they grab whatever they need, and they literally burn the infrastructure down before the sun even sets.
Okay, so under 6 hours. Now, pair that timeline with the reality of a Tier 1 analyst performing manual triage today. The industry data shows it takes an analyst roughly 10 to 20 minutes to process a single case.
Best case scenario. Yeah.
Right. So by the time a ticket actually drops into the queue, gets manually assigned, and the analyst starts, pulling the relevant data to investigate, the phishing site has often already done its damage and vanished completely.
It's awful. The
Yeah.
analyst is essentially performing an autopsy rather than an intervention.
That is exactly what it is, an autopsy.
And that autopsy dynamic is incredibly demoralizing for a security professional. You are constantly arriving at the scene of the crime after the getaway car has already left.
Yeah, you just feel useless at that point.
You do. And because of this structural delay, a 2025 Cybersecurity Insiders report found that an astonishing 76% of SOCs are reporting severe alert fatigue.
I'm honestly surprised it's only 76%.
Right. Because when that volume spikes, analysts are forced into this terrible compromise. They simply cannot investigate every alert thoroughly.
So what do? Just close them.
Pretty much. They have to start clearing queues by dismissing alerts without adequate review just to keep the whole system from crashing, which means real critical threats get completely buried in the noise.
And, the traditional CISO instinct here, and frankly, the way the whole industry has operated for like 2 decades, is to just go to the board, secure more budget, and hire more analysts to brute force the queue.
Just throw bodies at the problem.
Exactly. If the line is too long, open more cash registers, right?
Oh.
If volume is the issue, why can't a CISO just hire more analysts to clear the queue?
Well, it's a completely logical instinct if you are basing it on legacy IT models. But the raw math of today's threat landscape destroys that strategy entirely.
Right.
Let's go back to that Microsoft threat intelligence data you mentioned earlier. 8.3 billion email-based threats in a single quarter. You cannot hire your way out of a number with 9 zeros in it.
Wow, you literally can't.
Furthermore, the ISC2 2024 Cybersecurity Workforce Study highlighted a global workforce gap of 4.8 million unfilled positions.
4.8 million. That's wild.
The talent pool literally does not exist. Even if you had an unlimited budget as a CISO, the human beings aren't there to hire. We cannot brute force this.
So the operational distance between detection and an analyst being ready to take action, it requires a fundamental workflow architecture change.
Exactly.
Which naturally leads the industry to turn to technology, right? If scaling headcount is mathematically impossible, we have to automate.
We have to.
But walking the expo floor at any major cybersecurity conference right now is just an exercise in profound frustration.
Oh, don't even get me started on the expo floors.
Right. Because there is this massive gaping canyon between vendor claims of, AI-powered threat intelligence and the actual operational reality. What we're usually looking at is just repackaged basic automation from 5 years ago with a shiny AI sticker slapped on the dashboard.
Yeah, a recent Cyware survey actually quantified that frustration perfectly. They found that 78% of security teams strongly believe AI can improve threat intelligence.
So the appetite is definitely there.
Oh, the appetite is huge. But only 43% actually report seeing any meaningful operational impact from the AI tools they've deployed so far.
Wow, that is a big drop-off.
That 35% gap between expectation and reality is exactly where AI washing lives. Most of what vendors are calling agentic AI today is simply, faster dashboards, slightly smarter alert routing, or maybe a large language model just summarizing a log file.
Right.
And that is not agentic.
So we need to define that boundary clearly for the CISOs listening who are trying to evaluate these tools. What is the actual mechanical difference between traditional automation and true agentic AI? Because like you said, they are constantly sold as the exact same thing.
Right. It really comes down to rigidity versus reasoning. Traditional automation is fundamentally rigid. It executes a single predefined action when a specific condition is met.
Like an if-then statement.
Exactly. Think of a standard Python script. If a domain matches an exact string in a block list, the script fires and blocks the IP. It is entirely rule-based. It does exactly one thing, exactly when told, and absolutely nothing more.
Yeah, it's totally static.
Right. It doesn't plan. It doesn't adapt to unexpected variables. And it certainly doesn't sequence complex tasks based on what it discovers in real time. Agentic AI, on the other hand, is built on a reasoning engine.
Which changes everything.
It executes multi-step, goal-directed workflows without a human having to write a script for every individual step or path.
Okay, so think about a traditional automation script like a standard kitchen toaster, right?
Right.
You push a lever down, and it applies heat to the bread for exactly 2 minutes.
I love that analogy.
It doesn't know if you put in a bagel, a Pop-Tart, or a literal piece of cardboard. It just applies heat. But an agentic system is entirely different. It functions like a highly trained sous chef.
Right, yeah.
You give the sous chef a broad objective, say, prepare a beef Wellington. The sous chef autonomously checks the pantry to see what ingredients are available. They prep the meat, they chop the vegetables based on what is fresh, they adjust the seasoning if something tastes off.
They adapt.
Exactly. And they package the entire meal beautifully for the head chef. The head chef doesn't have to tell the sous chef how to hold the knife or what temperature to set the oven. The head chef just approves the final dish and serves it.
The sous chef dynamic perfectly captures the autonomy of the system. The agentic system is structurally different because it can select and use tools on its own. It handles conditional logic dynamically. If we map this onto the actual workflow steps for investigating external threats, it becomes very clear why this is so revolutionary. The workflow starts with continuous monitoring.
Okay.
The agent is constantly watching massive, disparate data streams. We're talking domain registration feeds, public app stores, social media platforms, certificate transparency logs, and it's doing this around the clock with zero shift handovers or fatigue.
And when it spots an anomaly like, say, a suspicious cluster of newly registered domains that look vaguely like your brand, it moves into detection. But it doesn't just throw a raw alert into a human's queue like the old way, right?
Exactly, and this is where the traditional model breaks down, but the agentic model really shines. It moves immediately into automated enrichment.
So no human is involved yet.
Zero human involvement. Without an analyst ever clicking a single button or writing a query, the agent recognizes the context of the threat and starts reasoning through the next logical steps. It queries the WHOIS registration data to find out who bought the domain. It maps the hosting infrastructure to see if that IP address is linked to known malicious server farms. It pulls SSL certificates to see when the encryption was provisioned.
It's essentially mimicking the exact thought process of a seasoned threat hunter. Like if a human analyst sees a weird domain, they naturally think, oh, I should check if this site is visually spoofing our login page.
Exactly.
And the agentic system does the same thing. It autonomously spins up a headless browser, navigates to the suspicious domain safely, captures a screenshot, and runs a visual similarity analysis against your company's legitimate branding.
And it dynamically selects these tools based on the breadcrumbs it finds along the way.
Which is incredible.
It is. And it doesn't just dump all that raw data onto the analyst's desk either. The next phase is risk scoring and prioritization.
Right, to cut through the noise.
The reasoning engine looks at all the gathered evidence and separates the highly active, weaponized brand impersonations, the ones actively harvesting credentials right now, from the low-risk, benign lookalikes or just park domains. And then finally, it executes evidence packaging.
And that packaging phase is where the return on investment is truly realized. It compiles this beautifully structured, comprehensive case file.
Yes.
It includes the registration timelines, the infrastructure maps, the visual screenshots, and a clear summary of the risk. So the analyst opens a ticket that is already fully built rather than starting from a blank search bar.
Exactly.
We are literally compressing hours of manual, tedious investigation into minutes of automated preparation.
You are handing the head chef a perfectly prepped meal. The human analyst only has to review the evidence and make the final decision.
But let's push the boundary on that for a second, because I know what people are thinking. If this agent is so incredibly capable, if its reasoning engine is advanced enough to gather all this external intelligence, run visual similarity algorithms, map the infrastructure, and package conclusive evidence, why not just let the agent serve the meal?
The autonomous takedown question.
Right. If speed is the ultimate goal and phishing sites only live for a few hours, why do we even need the human chef at that point? Why not let the AI take down the malicious site autonomously?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, and answering it requires us to definitively separate credible cybersecurity engineering from, well, sci-fi marketing.
Right.
Credible agentic threat intelligence does not mean autonomous enforcement. It does not mean unsupervised robotic takedowns. ISACR released this excellent, highly pragmatic guidance in 2025 that established the gold standard for this technology.
And what was their framework?
Their framework is literally automate the routine, escalate the consequential.
Automate the routine, escalate the consequential. That is a fantastic foundational policy for any CISO looking to deploy AI.
It is the only legally and operationally safe way to deploy it, because making the wrong call on a domain takedown isn't just a minor technical glitch that you can roll back.
No, definitely not.
It is a massive business liability. If an autonomous agent mistakenly issues a takedown notice against the wrong domain or blocks a legitimate business partner's infrastructure, you face severe legal exposure.
You completely damage your brand's reputation in the market.
Exactly. You can disrupt supply chains and completely ruin customer experiences. The stakes are simply too high for an algorithm to have the final say.
Let's contextualize that liability with a real-world edge case, actually, because things are rarely black and white in external threat intelligence.
Oh, almost never.
Imagine a scenario where the autonomous agent targets a domain. Visually, the website looks exactly like a brand impersonation. It's using your company's logos, it shares some overlapping infrastructure, and the WHOIS data is intentionally obscured.
Right, looking super shady.
Exactly. To the AI, it checks every single box for a malicious phishing site. But in reality, that domain belongs to a legitimate regional affiliate or like a reseller in South America who just happens to have incredibly messy, unapproved branding practices
Which happens all the time.
all the time. If the AI takes that down automatically, you haven't stopped a threat. You've just destroyed a legitimate revenue stream and burned a partner relationship.
That exact scenario, that incredibly muddy gray zone, is precisely why human judgment is the ultimate feature of these systems, not just a temporary fallback until the AI gets smarter.
Right, it's designed that way.
AI agents are absolutely perfect for pattern execution. They can pull WHOIS data, scrape sites, and calculate visual similarity scores infinitely faster than we can. But human beings are fundamentally required for pattern recognition in ambiguous high-stakes environments.
Because the AI doesn't know the business context.
Exactly. An AI agent cannot understand the nuances of organizational politics. It doesn't know about the complex reseller agreement the sales team signed last Tuesday. It cannot weigh the nuanced legal and diplomatic downstream effects of a false takedown.
So the architecture is intentionally designed as a partnership. The agent handles the grueling, high-volume groundwork, and the human analyst provides the context and makes the consequential call.
Right.
Bounded autonomy isn't a limitation of the technology. It's a protective, necessary guardrail for the business.
Precisely. And a sweeping survey by the Cybersecurity Tribe, which was conducted across late 2025 and early 2026, confirmed that the industry actually understands this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they found that 73% of organizations are actively using or developing agentic AI, but they are specifically and deliberately favoring bounded autonomy.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, as CrowdStrike's CTO noted recently, credible agentic security introduces autonomy in very deliberate stages. Human control has to be designed into the system's DNA from the very start, not just bolted on as a panic button later.
Okay, so we have a really solid grasp now on what agentic threat intelligence is, the mechanisms behind its reasoning engine, and why it absolutely must be safely bounded by human oversight.
Yes.
So the next logical step for the CISO listening today is deployment. Where is the ideal operational proving ground? Like, if a security team wants to integrate this technology today and see immediate measurable value without disrupting the entire organization, where do they start?
Counterintuitively, the best way to answer where to start is to clearly identify where not to start.
Okay, lay it on me.
Internal incident response, internal vulnerability management, deep endpoint telemetry. These are undeniably valid future territories for agentic AI. But right now, today, they are exceptionally messy starting points.
Because internal environments are built entirely on implicit organizational context, right?
Exactly.
Like if an AI agent is trying to investigate an internal alert, it has to know what normal looks like for a highly specific environment. It has to know that Bob from accounting always logs in from his iPad at 2 a.m. on Thursdays because he works in a different time zone.
That implicit knowledge is incredibly hard to codify for an AI.
Yeah, it would just trigger false positives constantly.
Nonstop. Not to mention the immense data governance friction. Unleashing an autonomous agent to crawl through highly sensitive internal HR databases, financial systems, or proprietary source code repositories requires months, if not years, of compliance approvals in internal politics.
Nobody wants to fight that battle on day one.
Exactly. But if we pivot our focus outward to external digital threats, things like brand impersonation, weaponized phishing infrastructure, and fake mobile apps sitting in public app stores, we find the absolute perfect proving ground.
Yes.
Structurally, the external threat landscape is custom-built for agentic threat intelligence.
It's basically the difference between navigating a complex family dispute and working the front door of a venue as a bouncer.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Trying to use an AI agent for internal incident response right now is like asking it to settle a decades-old family argument. The agent needs immense emotional intelligence, implicit context, and an understanding of who said what to whom 5 years ago. It's just too nuanced.
Right.
But using an agentic workflow for external threats is like hiring a highly efficient bouncer to check IDs at the front door of a club. The rules are completely objective. The criteria are external. The bouncer doesn't need to know the customer's life story or emotional state to scan an ID, verify its authenticity against a public database, and determine if it's fake.
That bouncer analogy captures the objectivity perfectly. External threats are the ideal starting point for three very specific operational reasons.
Let's hear them.
First, you have relentless volume paired with a highly consistent workflow pattern. Remember the 3.8 million phishing attacks we discussed earlier?
Hard to forget.
The sheer number is overwhelming. But every single one of those attacks requires the exact same investigative loop. Detect the domain, enrich the data, prioritize the risk, package the evidence. It is a highly repeatable loop. And agentic reasoning engines absolutely thrive on repeatable, objective loops.
That makes total sense. And the second reason removes the compliance headache entirely, doesn't it?
Yes, it completely bypasses it. The data required to investigate external threats is openly accessible.
Right, because it's public.
Exactly. To prove a mobile app is fake or a website is spoofed, the agent doesn't need access to your internal HR files. It uses WHOIS databases, public app stores, social media platforms, and certificate transparency logs. All of this information is readily available via standard public APIs.
So there is zero internal data governance friction. You don't have to spend 6 months arguing with the compliance team just to let the AI look at a public website.
Exactly. Which leads right into the third reason. The task boundaries are crystal clear.
Which means the AI doesn't get confused.
Precisely. The inputs are clearly defined public data sets, and the outputs are clearly defined evidence packages. The agent isn't trying to guess the internal criticality of a server. It is simply finding a fake site, gathering the undeniable public evidence that proves it is fake, and handing that structured evidence to the human analyst.
When you combine those three factors, consistent workflows, public data access, and clear boundaries, you have an environment where agentic AI can instantly provide value without triggering massive internal disruption. It's the ultimate quick win for a CISO. So if we pull all of this together and connect it back to the core operational goals of the CISOs listening, the true return on investment of agentic threat intelligence today is actually brilliantly simple. You are entirely removing the manual enrichment queue.
That's it. That's a game changer.
By letting the AI handle the data gathering, you dramatically narrow that critical window between when a threat appears in the wild and when your analyst is fully equipped to take decisive action.
You are collapsing what used to be hours of mind-numbing copy-and-paste data gathering into a few minutes of automated, highly accurate preparation, which means we are finally positioned to beat that 54-hour phishing lifespan.
We are getting analyst-ready, conclusive evidence before the threat disappears or harvests a massive database of employee credentials.
Yes.
We are finally getting that air traffic controller out of the stairwell, off the tarmac, and back up in the tower where they belong, making the high-level decisions they were actually trained to make. You are giving your team the ability to operate at the actual speed of the modern threat landscape, and you are doing it without asking them to work unsustainable 80-hour wakes.
It really is a massive paradigm shift in how we approach security operations. We aren't replacing analysts with robots. We are supercharging our human talent by removing the friction that just bogs them down.
Which leads me to a final, slightly provocative thought for you to ponder as you look at your own SOC operations today. If we implement these bounded agentic systems and we completely remove all that manual administrative data gathering drudgery, the fundamental role of our analysts shifts, right?
Completely.
They transition from being exhausted, overwhelmed data collectors to highly empowered decision makers. How might that shift not only accelerate your mean time to respond, but radically improve team morale?
That is such an important point.
What does it do for job satisfaction and employee retention when your highly trained professionals actually get to use their judgment and expertise every single day instead of just feeling like they are drowning in administrative tasks? When people feel effective, they stay, they thrive.
It is a profound shift in the daily lived experience of a cybersecurity professional. It moves the job from being reactive and exhausting to being proactive and deeply rewarding.
It truly does, and it's exactly the kind of shift the industry needs right now. If you want to move beyond the theoretical and see how this transition works in absolute reality, we highly encourage you to book a demo, to see the Memcyco solution in action.
It's really something you have to see to believe.
You can experience firsthand how these evidence-led agentic workflows can completely transform your external threat operations, finally keeping you steps ahead of the adversaries. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you on the next one.